In a recent explosive interview with NBC News, former President Donald Trump reignited controversy by suggesting that the notion of a third presidential term is not entirely off the table, a remark that carries profound legal, political, and constitutional implications. This report meticulously examines these unprecedented statements and the potential ramifications they hold for American democracy. During the broadcast, Trump refrained from dismissing the possibility of a third term outright. Sad. Instead, he posited that there exist methods by which such an outcome might be achieved, cautioning that it was far too early to discount these prospects. This declaration, delivered with a mix of gravity and provocative ambiguity, immediately set off alarm bells among legal scholars and political analysts alike. At the heart of the matter is the United States Constitution, which unambiguously restricts any individual from serving more than 2 terms as president. Changing this fundamental rule would necessitate an arduous and virtually insurmountable process, a constitutional amendment requiring extensive approval by Congress and ratification by the states. Such a shift, given America's long-standing democratic traditions, appears highly unlikely. Yet Trump's comments suggest that there may be alternative strategies under consideration. One proposed avenue involves the establishment of what some political observers describe as a shadow presidency. In this scenario, rather than holding the office directly, Trump could exert significant influence over the executive branch by orchestrating a scenario in which another candidate, such as J.D. Vance, wins the presidency. For instance, if Vance were to secure the office in 2028 with a high-profile running mate like Marco Rubio, Trump's role might be reimagined. He could resign from his previous position or assume a lesser public role while remaining the de facto power behind the scenes. This form of power transition, while entirely unprecedented in modern American politics, mirrors the tactics employed in authoritarian regimes where control is maintained through indirect means. Indeed, comparisons have been drawn between these potential maneuvers and strategies observed in other nations. For example, Vladimir Putin's tenure in Russia, particularly during a period when term limits were formally in place, involved the transfer of power through the appointment of a prime minister, thereby allowing him to remain the central figure in government. Although the American context is markedly different in terms of institutional checks and balances, the parallel underscores a growing unease among experts who see Trump's statements as an explicit invitation to bypass established democratic norms. Adding to the complexity, the report has highlighted an even more controversial proposition, the possibility of positioning Laura Trump as a candidate for the presidency. This suggestion, made in a context that might be interpreted as both tongue-in-cheek and disturbingly sincere, reinforces concerns about the lengths to which Trump and his inner circle might go to perpetuate their hold on power. While the idea may strike some as far-fetched, it serves yet another illustration of the breadth of strategies being contemplated, a sign that Trump's ambitions extend well beyond conventional political maneuvering. Critically, mainstream media coverage of these remarks has often been dismissive, with many commentators suggesting that Trump's talk of a third term is merely a distraction from pressing issues such as economic downturns and a struggling stock market. Yet, a closer examination of his statements reveals a consistent pattern of provocative rhetoric, a pattern that has historically culminated in tangible attempts to subvert democratic processes. Trump's explicit assertion that he is not joking about these possibilities demands a measured and serious response. The media's reluctance to engage with the substance of his claims risks underestimating the potential threat posed by an individual who has repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to flout constitutional boundaries. The historical context of January 6, 2021 looms large over this discussion. On that fateful day, a violent insurrection aimed at disrupting the constitutional process of transferring power was unleashed, a stark manifestation of Trump's determination to remain in office despite a clear electoral defeat. The insurrection was not a spontaneous eruption of chaos, but rather a calculated effort to prevent Congress from certifying the Electoral College results. Such actions, which resulted in the loss of life and deepened national divisions, have left an indelible mark on the American political landscape. They serve as a grim reminder that the willingness to resort to violence in defense of power is a real and present danger. In light of these disturbing developments, the role of free and fair elections emerges as the single most crucial safeguard against authoritarianism. Elections provide the legal and democratic means through which the American people can assert their will and hold public officials accountable. They serve as a powerful counterweight to any attempts by political figures to manipulate or bypass constitutional constraints. Indeed, Trump's repeated attacks on the electoral process, including efforts to centralize control over election administration through executive orders, underscore his deep-seated fear of democratic accountability. His actions in 2020 and his subsequent legal battles serve as evidence that, regardless of his ambitions, the ultimate check on any president's power lies in the ballot box. At present, multiple legal challenges are already underway. A network of lawsuits spanning 20 states and totaling 46 cases is actively contesting the legality of actions that could undermine electoral integrity. These legal battles are not merely abstract disputes. They represent a concerted effort by concerned citizens, legal professionals, and political activists to ensure that the sanctity of the electoral process is preserved. As the nation moves closer to pivotal elections, such as the upcoming state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, the stakes could not be higher. Control of judicial appointments and the broader implications for electoral fairness are on the line, and the outcome in Wisconsin may well serve as a bellwether for similar contests across the country. Given these circumstances, it is imperative for citizens to remain vigilant and engaged. The challenges posed by potential authoritarian maneuvers demand not only legal and institutional resistance, but also active participation from the electorate. Every vote in the upcoming elections becomes a vital contribution to the defense of democracy. Whether one identifies as a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat, the principle remains the same. No individual or faction should be allowed to undermine the foundational norms of our political system by purchasing influence or subverting the rule of law. This report calls on all eligible voters, especially those in key battleground states like Wisconsin, to exercise their right to vote with utmost seriousness. It is essential to ensure that the mechanisms of free and fair elections remain intact, not only to protect current democratic processes, but also to prevent the erosion of rights that could enable a single individual to amass unchecked power. In closing, the remarks made by Donald Trump regarding a potential third term are not idle talk. They represent a clear and present challenge to the constitutional order and the democratic principles that have long defined the United States. As citizens and legal guardians of democracy, we must heed the warnings implicit in his words and prepare to defend our institutions vigorously. The future of American democracy hinges on our collective ability to resist authoritarian impulses and to ensure that power remains subject to the will of the people. This investigation stands as both a warning and a call to action, a reminder that the integrity of our political system depends on the active engagement of every citizen. As the legal battles intensify and the electoral contests draw nearer, the duty to safeguard the rule of law becomes ever more critical. It is incumbent upon all of us to remain informed, to participate in the electoral process, and to hold accountable those who would seek to undermine the democratic framework that has long been the bedrock of this nation. Says